right, so it was August 11th, 2001. I would have been just freshly out of high school. I was working as a welder, working on grain mills, and I was living far from God. I was into drugs and alcohol, partying, hanging out with the wrong people that I shouldn't have been hanging out with from the get-go. Got my Ford Ranger and was traveling down Route 30, and I went left to center of the double yellow line or whatever it was. The people behind me said that my head kept nodding back and forth. They could see my head just nodding, and every time I'd go left to center, they'd flash their lights and honk the horn, is what the police report said. So I went left to center and I hit a semi head on, going 60 miles an hour on a 2-lane road, and I'm sitting here still. And again, I wasn't living with God. I knew who He was. I grew up in a Christian home. I knew better, but I decided to rebel against what my parents taught me and what I knew was best for what God had in life, or in store for me, for my life. And so I hit the semi head on, and they said that my truck, the amount of force that I hit them, and I remember I was going 60 because I remember I set my cruise. That was the last thing I remember of the entire night. So they said I hit that semi with such force that my back tires rose up off of the ground, and at that point, obviously, the semi pushed me. So they said my truck did a 360 in the middle of or I guess a 180. 360 would be going the other way. So it was a 180, so it spun me in a 180. My tires caught somehow still off the pavement and drove me into the diesel tanker underneath the driver's side door. Again, I was out cold. I don't remember any of this. So at that point, the truck rolled over upside down, was wedged between the asphalt and the diesel tanker. And I was stuck under there. I don't know how many feet or whatever, but as soon as the semi-truck hit the grass burn part of the highway, my truck dislodged and went end over end 3 times. My truck came to rest with the driver's side door down and the passenger side door sticking straight to the sky. And I came to rest there. Again, I was still unconscious at this point. And I woke up to the sound of jaws of life crunching at metal. Just boom, just breaking like sounded like twigs breaking, but metal. Them cutting the roof off of the truck. So I woke up to the sound of that and to the sight of, just to kind of paint a picture for you, of a blue tarp. I remember it was blue tarp over top of me, and I thought I was dead. I thought, okay, I didn't know you saw a blue tarp when you died, but I guess I'm seeing it now. I thought I was dead, and I didn't panic at first. I can remember I just saw the blue, just trying to figure out where I was at or what was going on. And then blood started pouring down from a scar on top of my head. Or not a scar, but a cut. Now it's a scar. And blood just started streaming down my face, covering my eyes. And I remember the top of the steering wheel was right here underneath my neck. So that kind of tells you a little bit kind of where the dashboard was at and everything. I was pinned in. I couldn't get my arms out or anything like that. I could feel my fingers, but I couldn't move my arms. So I was like, what's going on? And so I started doing what any normal person would do. I started screaming my head off like bloody murder. Just my arms are trapped, and there's a blue tarp over me and blood over my eyes, and I can't see. So I started screaming, and this arm came through the passenger side door window, came through and grabbed my hand. And this person kept telling me, which my hand was down here, kind of pinned down still. This person kept telling me, Jonathan, it's going to be okay. Jonathan, it's going to be okay. And at that point, I didn't think about it, but the only person that called me Jonathan was my mom back at that time. So I was like, why should you call me Jonathan? Not that I said that, but thinking back on it now, that's weird. Like, why does he call me Jonathan? So this hand came through, and I could just look, and I could barely see the silhouette of this person standing on top of my truck. So he kept telling me, Jonathan, it's okay, Jonathan. All the point, could hear this through glass and metal being crunched around me. They finally got the roof off, and they pulled me out, and I was in and out of consciousness at this point still, and I heard them say, he's got a broken right wrist, and his left ankle's shattered, basically. So I'm like, way to be positive. All right. I can remember they put me in the life flight out in the middle of the cornfield and took me to Lima Memorial Hospital, and I laid in and out of consciousness. I can remember them cutting my clothes off, the whole 9 yards, just in and out, just that entire day. It was just a blur to me, honestly. I remember finally waking up and still regaining consciousness after I was in the ICU. I had a neck brace on, had glass on my left side of my face and left side of my arm. Would have been like 4 years later, I was sitting in class and being able to just see a little scab, like, what in the world is that from? And be able to pick glass out of my arm 4 years later. I'm like, what? This is crazy. So I lay there, and my mom was a wreck. My dad was somewhat of a wreck. I was still somewhat of a wreck, but I was still in this mind frame of I'm invincible. Like, nothing can stop me kind of mentality. It's crazy that I just went through a crazy truck wreck, and I'm still thinking I'm invincible. And the doctors came in. The doctors said, you may not make it through the night. There may be internal bleeding going on. And I'm like, what? At this point, I started to wake up a little bit. That shock factor finally hit me a little bit after these years of me living a life of partying and sin and away from God, essentially. I mean, that's what sin is, and I started waking up a little bit and realizing, whoa, like, I'm 18 years old. I was 18 at this point. Not now. I was 18 at this point. I remember thinking, whoa, there's no way. Like, I'm 18. I'm supposed to have the rest of my life to look forward to. I just graduated high school. I'm supposed to be living life to the fullest right now. And this doctor tells me that I might not make it through the night. And I was still in that phase of rebellion still, just wanted to fight against this doctor. Like, who are you to tell me that I'm going to die or not? How foolish that is for me to say that now, because he's a doctor. He knows. So that night, after my mom and dad and everybody left, it was just me and Jesus. Just whether I was with him or not doesn't matter. He was still there. He was still speaking to me, just throwing little subtle things into my head. The only thing I could do was, because I was on a flat bed, they couldn't elevate me whatsoever. I was on a flat bed, and there was a morphine drip as well. And I remember looking up and being able to count the specks in the ceiling tiles, or in each ceiling tile. That's how I was trying to keep myself from not falling asleep, because I was fearful. I didn't want to die, but the doctor left it as an option. Like, I may die, I may not, so I'm like, I'm fighting falling asleep. And man. I hate doing this. I hate doing this, man. Like, thinking about that. So there I was, counting the specks of the ceiling tile and trying to keep myself from falling asleep. And I just cried out to Jesus. I said, whether you're real or not, I'm sorry for how I lived. And maybe it was a selfish prayer because I was fearful of dying, but it was where I was at the time. I just needed him. I needed him. I was tired of playing the games of church. I was tired of even though I was living a life of sin in those 3 years, I was still going to church with my parents just to appease them, just trying to keep the peace between me and my mom and dad. I was just playing church though. You know, like I could put a Sunday morning face on, but my Monday to Saturday was my Friday to Saturday was definitely not church. It was not Jesus. Would have been August 11th, 2001, I woke up. Well, I guess August 12th, 2001, I woke up. Not a ghost or a figment of your imagination sitting here. I woke up and I praised Jesus the first breath that I breathed that day, that I remember being able to wake up and look up and see those, once again, the specks of the ceiling tile. So they ran CAT scans and all kinds of scans. I don't remember everything they did, but the only surgery I had to go through was just really my ankle. That was it. I never had to go through any other surgery. They said that there was no internal bleeding whatsoever. So I was like, great. You know, like thinking as a kid, I'm still, like I said, that 18-year-old mentality, I was feeling invincible. But I was in a different mind frame now, because I truly believe that I accepted Christ that night of 8/11/2001. I truly accepted him in my life because I believed him. Just like Romans 10:9 says, if you confess with your heart and if you confess with your mouth, because you can't confess with your heart, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior, then you'll be saved. I did that. You know, it was not my parents' prayer. It wasn't my youth pastor's prayer. It wasn't my mentor's prayer. It was my prayer. It was my prayer to Jesus. And I truly believe that it came into my heart. I truly believe that when we confess and invite him, he comes in. And so I woke up, fast forward a little bit, I guess. Fast forward to 8/12 now, August 12th, 2001. I woke up, the scans came back all negative. There was no internal bleeding going on. I guess there was nothing wrong with my brain, I guess. I mean, maybe there is. Some people know me, they're like, yeah, there's something wrong with you. But I remember just laying there, just wanting to rejoice, wanting to jump out of the bed and like, oh my gosh, I'm alive, guys. Like, oh my gosh, like I get to breathe this breath that I have in my lungs that Christ has put in me, that God's put in me. So I was in ICU for 6 days. I was in ICU for 6 or 7 days, something like that, in recovery for 3 days. Towards the end of the ICU, this is where it kind of gets a little meaty for me. It was really kind of confirmation for me that I'm alive because God saved me. Not just saved me from sin, but saved me from a wreck that I should have died in. The state troopers and the sheriffs came in, and I was like, great. Here we go. All right, time to reap some consequences, really. So they came in and they just wanted me to sign for traffic violation, for failure to control or whatever it was. I'm like, hey, I'll sign. Yeah, I'll sign whatever you need me to sign. So I signed it, and after they did their little paperwork stuff, I asked them, I said, were one of you guys one of the ones that were on top of the truck telling me it's going to be okay? They said, no, we weren't, but we weren't first on the scene. So I was like, all right. Not that I was like great, but it was like, all right, big deal. So they went out, and then I can't remember if it was the same day or maybe it was a day later. The volunteer firefighters came in from Forest, Ohio, which is just outside Fremont, Ohio, kind of northwestern Ohio up that way. They came in, I remember there was 3 of them. 2 stood right beside my bed that were older, and then one was a younger kid, probably about my age, maybe a little older, sitting down in the chair kind of further away, kind of from here to the window. I guess you can't really see that in the video, but it's, I don't know, 10 feet, something like that. And I asked them, I said, were you guys all three of them. At this point, I'm able to be upright because they didn't think that there was any bleeding. So I'm like, awesome, what do I get to count specks in the ceiling now? This is great. I asked all three of them, were you guys the ones that are standing on top of my truck, holding my hand saying, Jonathan, it's going to be okay? Or something along those lines. I can't remember my exact words, 20 some odd years ago, or 18, whatever it is. And they told me no. And so at this point, I started getting defensive. I'm like, what? Like, guys, there was somebody on top of my truck, and I'm trying to figure out who it is. Can you just help me out here? Was there anyone up there? And the younger kid gets up, and he comes in between the older guys. And I'm like, oh, shoot, am I going to get assaulted right here, like in the hospital bed? Not that that was going to happen, but I'm just messing around. He stood up, and he came over to me, and he told me, he said, Jonathan, this kid was first one on the scene. He said he was on his way home to Forest, Ohio. He said, I was the first one on the scene. I was several cars back from you. I never left that side of your truck. Never left it. He said, there was never anyone. There was never anyone on top of your truck. I was like, what? Get out of here. And still getting defensive towards this kid, like, you kidding me? Like, dude, there was somebody on top of my truck holding my hand telling me it's okay. And he told me, he said, we all thought your name was Robert, because when the sheriff got there, we looked up the license plate, and the license plate was in your dad's name, which is Robert. He said, no one ever knew at that time that your name was Jonathan. No one did. And I'm like, what? Like, there was somebody on top of my truck. He said, no, there wasn't. There was never anyone up there. And I truly believe that was the Holy Spirit. I truly believe that was God right there coming down, or an angel or something. Someone was holding my hand, telling me, Jonathan, it's okay. You're going to be all right. And I don't know, guys. I've tried to live my life that way. I've tried to live my life to the fullest, first off. Ever since I was a little kid, I've tried to live my life to the fullest. And looking back at that situation and looking back at that wreck, I try not to take a day for granted. I try not to take a breath for granted, because we're not guaranteed it. Not that that's fear, because I don't think that's Jesus. First off, is for us to be fearful of death or anything like that. But it's me trying to live and be grateful for the breath that I have in my lungs and the life that I get to live. And this day and the next day, or the next day that I get to live, that I'm thankful for the things that I have. That I'm thankful for where I'm at in life. I'm thankful for the breath that I'm breathing right now. I'm thankful for Christ saving me, for God saving me from a tragic wreck where I should be dead in my grave. I should be living a life in hell right now, but I'm not. He had more for me. So here I am sitting. And I can't get over it, man. Just there's so many people that I can be thankful for in that time. My youth pastor, even though I spit in his face so many times, coming into my recovery room at the time, handed me this book called Addicted to God. And I remember I spun through that book, or whatever you want to call it, or read through that book as fast as I could. There's days now where I get little devotionals or whatever, they're 30-day devotionals. I'm like, it might be more like 45-day devotional. That I was hungry back then, and I look back at those days that when I first accepted Christ into my life, I look back at those days and saw my hunger and know the hunger that I had for God, and I want that. I still want it. It's a continual thing that I'm fighting for. And so yeah, but looking back at that, I wish I could show you pictures. I've got pictures that I can show you, I guess. But I mean, people are like, you were in there? Yeah, I was in there. And the firefighters that were beside me told me, they said that if that steering wheel would have been, they said less than an inch. They said if it would have been protruded towards me less than an inch, it would have cut my windpipe, and I would have suffocated and died right there. But yet it was an inch away, or whatever it was, right there. To me, I think God stopped it. Honestly, I feel like God stopped me right there. can't really explain the right wrist to the left ankle. I think that's just consequences that, hey, maybe you shouldn't have been living like that, you know? But, so yeah, I guess that's it, really.